You're mentioning the elections in Syria coming on in April maybe. Wouldn't you just deal with a fraction of the Syrian people because so many left, and they left because they wanted to avoid the chaos in Syria?
Yeah, but for people to leave the country doesn't mean the country doesn't have his own population. I mean, at the end, Syria is not empty, and the majority of the Syrians still live in Syria, not vice versa. And that was the narrative before the presidential elections, and most of the world was surprised that those refugees participated in very high percentage in the elections outside Syria. So I think every Syrian would like to see something new within his country, because this change will give hope to the people. And that's natural in every culture, in every country.
Appreciates the Syrian government the role of Germany in hosting so many Syrians?
From a humanitarian point of view, of course, let's say, we cannot say that it's not good to accept refugees that leave their country because of the hardship in this country. But wouldn't it be more humanitarian to help those people stay in their country? Because if you ask any of them, they will tell you, I want to go back to my country. So wouldn't it be less costly to adopt or to undertake, let's say, more wiser and prudent policies regarding the conflict in Syria to keep those people living in their country through working against the terrorism, working to provide stability, not interfering in their issue? This would be more humanitarian.
Is there in general a specific role of Germany in the whole Syrian question, or is it just any foreign country like United States or Saudi Arabia?
We hope every country could play a role, especially a European country, a major country in the EU, like Germany, that has the strongest economy, that supposedly leading the EU politically, not only economically, but practically. No, we don't see that yet, because the role is about the will, and the will is about the independent. The question, how many European officials are independent from the American position? So far, what we see is a copy and paste of what they say, the American politicians, what they say and what they do. That's what we see. So I cannot talk about the role if there's no independence.
During my last trip to Syria, I went to Aleppo. Now I've been to Homs. It's like incredible pictures from apocalypse. I guess there is no doubt about that. Also, the Syrian army is part of the guilt, what happened here. My personal question, Mr. President, are you able to sleep at night?
The most important thing, am I able to work? Doesn't matter if you sleep or not. What's matter for the people now, they ask themselves, what can the president do? How much of the terrorists can we get rid of or convince them to go back to their normal life? That's what we are doing every day. So we don't sleep because we cannot sleep. We don't sleep because we have to work. So that's the point.
The Doctors Without Borders, an NGO, said that in 2015, 94 hospitals were bombarded, which they support. How is it possible? I mean, you cannot claim that all these, let's say, war crimes were committed just by US-led coalition. Some of the parts were from Russia or from Syria as well.
Actually, this incident in particular, we don't know who did it. If we wanted to do it, we could have done it long time ago. We are here. We could have done it long time ago. So there was no reason for us to attack a hospital. The question, what you mentioned as crime, of course it's crime, but it depends on which criteria you are basing this term on. If you want to base it on our criteria, it's a crime. But according to the Western criteria, no, for a very simple reason, because the West so far haven't described the war on Iraq in 2003, where more than 1.5 million been killed, as war crime. They didn't describe this in Yemen now, where the Saudi committed atrocities. They don't describe it. The same in Syria, when the rebels kill thousands of innocents by mortars and suicide bombers. They don't describe it as crimes, to be frank. So it depends on the criteria. According to our criteria, whoever done this is a criminal.
To make it clear, the most of the observers of war say that Syrian army and Russian Air Force are responsible for that. Not as a collateral damage, but as a war strategy, bombing schools and hospitals. Isn't it a burden on your shoulders?
The simple question you have to ask in front of such a narrative: what do we get if we do it? What's our interest in doing this? Even if you want, let's put aside the values and principles to say no, because the government has built these, and the government need those for the people. And the government, if you want to bring the people to its side, it needs to offer them with the basic infrastructure and services. That's the simple thing. But if we put all that aside, the question, what do we get? We lose. We don't get anything. So we don't have any interest in doing so. So definitely not. We don't do it. This is our hospital. We know where is it. And if there's a terrorist, they won't be in the hospital. You'll have doctors in the hospital. And the same in Raqqa, as I said, we are sending vaccines to Raqqa, where there's ISIS. Why to attack a hospital in another city? This is contradiction.
2 years ago, there was a time when the Syrian army was on the defeat. It was not very strong. In al-Qusayr, for example, at the Lebanese border. And then we saw that the Hezbollah stepped in. Now, end of last year, you were about to lose Aleppo, and then we saw the Russians coming, helping you. And then we see a lot of fighters and advisors from Tehran, from Iran. So what request these powers for their help?
First of all, regarding what you call it defeat, actually every war is made of different battles, and you lose battles and you win battles. So we were losing somewhere and we were winning somewhere else. It wasn't about being defeated or being winning. It's not easy war. We are fighting tens of countries who support those proxy mercenaries and terrorists. For our allies and friends who joined this war in different ways, some of them directly, some of them indirectly, they have different vision. They didn't come to Syria to help the Syrian president or to help the Syrian government and so on. Actually, they came because they know that terrorism, if it prevails in some area, it will have no borders. It doesn't recognize borders. The evidence is ISIS. From Libya to Iraq to Syria, there are no borders. So if we have terrorism taking control in this region, it will spill over somewhere else, not only the neighboring countries. So they have clear vision regarding that. So they didn't defend us, only us. They were defending themselves. So they didn't come to ask me for anything. All our friends respect our sovereignty, and they don't ask for anything in return.
Mr. President, can you say that Syria is still a sovereign state, or is your policy already made in Tehran or at the Kremlin?
Sovereignty is a proportional term. Before the crisis, Israel was occupying our land, so we didn't consider our sovereignty to be complete before having your land back. And now during the crisis, many terrorists crossing our border, many American and alliance, what they call it, alliance airplanes breaching our airspace. So you cannot talk about complete sovereignty. But at the same time, when you have a constitution, when you have institutions working, when you have state doing its job, even in its minimum for the Syrian people, the most important, when the Syrian people are not submissive to any other power, it means you're still sovereign, not in the full sense.
Let's go back 5 years when the uprisings in the Arab world started, even in Daraa, in the south of Syria, at the Jordan border. Our impression is that there was some youngsters printing some graffitis on the wall, and they were imprisoned, and their parents wanted them back. The security forces really struck back very, very tough. Was it a good idea to fight that kind of youngster craziness so tough and to start all the civil war from that point on?
First of all, the whole story didn't exist. It didn't happen. It was only propaganda. We heard about them. We never saw those children that's been taken to prison that time. So it was only a fallacious narrative. Let's suppose that what happened, which didn't happen. But let's compare it with what's happening in the United States recently, during the last year, where everybody is discussing the killing of many black people by the police, which is very condemned by many people in the United States. But did anyone ask the people to hold machine gun to kill just because the policeman made a mistake? That's not excuse. So that didn't happen, but if it had happened, it's not excuse for anyone to hold machine gun and go and fight the government and kill civilian and innocent people. The other question, what countermeasures would you resort to when you have people killing in the street and attacking property? To tell them, do whatever you want, I'm open, I'm not going to respond? That's not correct. We have only one option, is to stop them and to prevent them from continue the killing. At the same time, they have machine guns. We cannot throw balloons at them. We have to use our guns because they are militants. This is the only option that we had that time.
The war in Syria destabilizes the whole area, the surrounding states like Turkey, like Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, but more, it affects already Europe. So large parts of the world are affected by the Syrian war. What are you doing to stop this nightmare?
It's not only about Syria. Our job to do two things. Since the beginning of the conflict, we adopted two tracks. Making dialogue with everyone, countries, states, factions, militants, and so on, in order to preserve stability or restore stability. The other one is to fight the terrorists who doesn't want to give up armaments. This is the only track. But the question here, what are the other parties willing to do? Part of the disaster or nightmare that you're talking about, not only because the terrorists are killing and destroying, it's because of the Western embargo on Syria that affected every Syrian citizen, with no exception. What those officials are ready to do in order to help alleviating this pain and nightmare in Syria? What are they going to do in order to make pressure and exert influence on countries supporting terrorists like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, in order to force them to stop smuggling terrorists and armament and give them all kind of logistical support? That's the question. When all those countries agreed, or let's say have the will to do their duty regarding this, I can assure you that we won't have problem to stop this nightmare in Syria.
My last question, Mr. President. 2000, when your father Hafiz died, you stepped in, you went to Damascus from your position as an eye doctor in London. Having in mind what all was happening in these 5 years, this last 5 years, would you do it again? Would you come back to Damascus, or would you stay in London?
Yes, in this region where politics is everything in the life of every citizen, because it affects and influences his daily life, you cannot be but politician by nature, let's say, anyone, any Syrian citizen, because of our circumstances. And of course, as someone who belongs to a political family, I will have the same passion toward politics. But it's more than hobby or something you like as a sector. It's about how can you serve your country. Before that, I was a doctor in the public sector. Now I'm a politician in the public sector. So I'm moving from public sector to a wider public sector. It's the same principle, but when you can help more Syrian people, of course, you have to be ready to do it again and again and again, till you don't have the ability to deliver, and the Syrian people doesn't want you anymore in that position.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for you.